All right, welcome back everyone to the Family Dinner Podcast. We're excited today to hopefully have a lighter conversation. We'll see how that goes, but we're looking forward to that. We're all feeling a little silly, it seems.
Mhm.
So today I was thinking about everything we've been talking about so far, and we just had a really powerful conversation with our dad as well. And one of the things for me that felt important to talk about was the importance of our home. And because we did move quite often growing up. And
Yeah, so like you moved every 2 years on average.
okay,
Okay.
what memories come up around the different homes that we lived in? And I think all of us may have slightly different ideas or memories that come up with that. And also, like, what stayed the same as we moved and what also changed.
Probably like as I think about memories of youth, I generally think I go back to like the time at the Roy House down the street from Grandma and Grandpa.
Mm,
I think as if I kind of fondly remember times with like cousins and stuff like that, it's usually in that era.
hmm
I can obviously remember all the other houses, and I think there
Steven's
was
basement.
Stevens' basement. Yeah, I mean Nerf wars down in Stevens' basement were a great time. Yeah, but yeah, I think. For something that kind of that I think about is I think I've talked about this before is when I've reflected on how I felt as a child and when I can remember playing and being like imaginative and being lost in that play. Like
hmm
that's for me is that house. Like the carpet in the bedroom I shared with Jared. I can remember the basement and I remember playing a couple different times, like in the back corner in that little playhouse we had in the dirt. I very much remember like playing in the dirt there.
mm
I remember playing in the mud on the side of the house behind the gate. And so, like, kind of when I reflect back on like childhood and that stage of just imagination,
mm.
that's like that house for me is what I recall. Like the things you remember, like I remember at that house when we got the cabinets painted inside, and like why do these images like live rent free in your mind for like your entire life? Makes so little sense to me. But like remember them paying. I remember the guy that we paid to do that. I remember what he looked like, and I remember him talking to us about the cabinets. And like, why does that memory like why is that stuck in my head?
Interesting. I mean, we got new carpet, painted those. I mean, did a few upgrades, but I'm curious, like, if you feel like, did you feel that house was big or small?
Hmm.
So at the time, like that's funny you said that because I think it's with like in my memory it's bigger. But if I think about it as an adult, I'm like, no, that house was small. Just because of I know what it's like, right? Just have being in houses like that, it would I know it's small, but as a kid, it felt big.
Mhm.
I think of like dancing to Footloose in the living room and it feels big.
hmm
But
On
yeah,
that call that you just had with Dad, so just so the listeners know, I don't think we're going to share that call here. That was just between you all and Dad,
hmm
unless you decide to share it. But Um, he brought up music on that call, I guess, right? A song that you'd sung together. I
hmm
know music, I mean, we bought that really nice stereo and we loved listening to, and we listened to, you know, more like symphony or tabernacle choir on Sundays, but during the week, I mean, we listened to all sorts of music. I mean, we really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I like that you brought that up, Jared.
I was been thinking about that since that call.
And I like that there wasn't a TV in there, that the TV was downstairs.
Mhm.
Just that, it felt like there was more. Obviously, we didn't have social media either, but like it just felt like there was more time to use our imaginations, even to connect, like just being in the front yard, the backyard. And, I think it's interesting that I'm sure we all have different memories of like all of those different places in the house. And I know it was weird just the other day. Like, yeah, I was like in that basement bathroom and then I was like trying to remember. I was like, was there a bathroom in your bedroom, Mom?
Mhm.
So there's just two bathrooms. Okay. Yeah, I
And
was like,
it was a tri-level house with a garage, right? Just a three-quarter bath downstairs, and upstairs was three bedrooms and a full bath. And on the main level, of course, the kitchen, dining, and living room.
mm-hmm.
I've actually spent lots of time, I mean, not lots, but some time trying to remember that basement. Like,
And
I can remember,
Heather's bedroom was down the basement too.
yeah, I mean, I remember that.
Laundry.
I remember the family room down there, because
You
we
played your
played
video games
down
down there a
there,
lot.
played video games down there, and had like a weird shelf thing, didn't it?
It was a
Mm,
not weird. I mean, just shelves and drawers
built
built
in.
But I
in.
mean, like uh,
It was
on the
so
side of the
weird.
backyard, like kind of like a shelf from the foundation.
There was a crawl space.
There was a crawl space. Hmm.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, that went
I remember I
under.
can smell it still. I remember
From the
smell
laundry room, Heather. You
laundry.
don't remember? You could get it to it from the
Um,
laundry room.
I mean, I had nightmares about that, laundry room for a long time, and then I moved down there right next to it. So that
Face
was,
your fears.
Face your fears. So
I
that's right.
certainly did. I certainly did.
I
Yeah.
lived,
Heather,
I
is that
lived in a
your
laundry
childhood
room.
house? Like how Josh and
Yeah.
Jared describe it? So that's where
Hmm.
you go back to?
Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
What
So
about
yeah,
you?
Ben, good question. What would be your childhood house for you and Liz?
I mean, mine is more of like as a child, it's mixed between the Crawford's house and then the Valley View house.
Mm.
Like I still have memories from the Crawford's house, like that backyard.
Yeah.
It's funny talking about, I've thought about this before, how things, I mean, obviously the perspective of the world as a child is huge. Um, but yeah, like I literally, it felt like I was lost in like a forest, when probably like as an adult, you're just like, yeah, you're in the backyard and some trees, dude.
It
Like,
was pretty big though.
there was a trampoline back there, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
you would walk through the path of trees and then there was a tramp.
I don't
No.
remember
I
that.
don't know about that.
There was stuff back there though.
Yeah. I mean, you could like camp out back there. There was like a dirt patch out, you could follow the path down where you couldn't really see the house. But then there was
Yeah,
like
it
a
was
patch
big.
of dirt.
It was big because there was other people's backyards back there that were also wooded. So it was kind of, I mean, like me and Josh built, I mean, you talking about that for how much younger you were, Ben, but even like me and Josh as young teenagers, like I mean, we built a fort back there. Do you remember that, Josh? We built a
Yeah.
fort.
I
It had
vaguely remember
we made a urinal in it out of a funnel.
that. That's awesome.
I remember like trying to do like a draw door. Like I remember like the rope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it felt like right there where that fort was, like that was at the very back of the yard. Like it felt like you couldn't see any houses from there, which
Right.
I'm sure you probably could have.
Do you remember that fort, Ben? Is that what you
I
said?
think vaguely, not specifically, no like details. I remember trying to scale the wall, like, because they're from the backyard and then to the from the porch to the grass. There's that. I remember trying to like, I tied a jump rope to it and tried to like rappel down. I remember that. That felt really cool.
Well, that was a really cool backyard. Liz, do you remember that house?
A little bit, not very much, but I
The
do
dog
remember
door?
I do remember the yard. I don't really remember anything about the house. I remember the fountain in the front
Yeah.
because I loved that for some reason. I would like daydream about it. And then about being like a mermaid.
Oh, that's cute. I love that.
And I remember the backyard for sure because I loved exploring like I remember the fort. Like that's what I was saying. There were things back there. There were like little things that, other kids had just like made or like sort of it just felt like a fun adventure back there. But I don't really remember the inside the house at all.
And
I
it
think
was nice that the back had, even though it was on a hill, the patio and the grass area was all level.
Mm.
And you could ride your little trikes and big wheels on that patio back there, Ben and Liz. I don't know if you remember that. And there was a swing set. And so it was nice that you would pretty much stay back there off the street and you could play. But Liz was really the one that she would try to escape through the trees and at a very young age come through the doggy door and
see ya.
Jared, do you remember that time we made like a flammable concoction back there on the patio?
Yeah.
And that like we lit it on fire and it overflowed and was running. And so like
Oh,
this stream of fire was running. Do you
Well,
remember that?
I think we
What?
tried to put it out with water.
We did. So that's what happened. So we tried to
Yeah.
put out water so it overflowed. And so this flammable liquid just kept running, but on fire.
Yeah.
On the
What
patio.
did you do?
Jared remembered to smother it.
Oh, good scout.
Good
Jared.
scouting skills.
But I remember there was a brief moment of like, uh-oh,
Yeah.
what is gonna happen?
Yeah.
That
Well,
was
glad nothing did. You guys figured it out.
That was like climbing on the roof and at the Roy house. Like, did you know about that, Mom, that we would get on the roof?
I don't remember
I mean, I think we mostly just got on that white roof, which was probably like the most dangerous, like the white metal awning.
the patio
So we would-
awning.
yeah, we would like hit balls up there, and then I think sometimes we got up there to jump on the tramp
Yeah.
as well. And we were all just kind of like made a pact that we weren't gonna tell Mom and Dad. Um,
No, that is crazy to think of. Like, I guess I could see Ilo doing that, climbing on top of the roof.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
guys have any specific holiday memories or birthday memories in either one of those houses?
Are you talking about like,
Just in general, like in the like you just said that specific house in Roy, right? For
Mhm.
the older three, and then the other two houses, the Valley View house or the Crawford's house that,
I mean, it is interesting to think about. Yeah, talking of this, I'll get to the holiday thing eventually, but like thinking of what's your childhood house, like the Wanda Lane house. For me, there felt like that. There's like a shadow over that house or something.
Hmm.
Like obviously we were there a short amount of time, but also even just the house felt dark. Just like big trees and.
that's where Casper died.
Yeah, it's because that's where Casper died. But then for sure, like my main houses that I feel like were my childhood houses were, um, yeah, the Crawfords and Valley View. And when she mentioned that, and and obviously it's interesting that I moved just not very far from there. Like I was gonna say before, like I would, there's like lots of different ways to get home through there. It's a windy neighborhood. So I would take Wallace Lane sometimes to go home and drive past that house and be mad that it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
an ugly stucco, house that, they tore down the Crawford's house. Um, and yeah, like think about those things. And when Liz talked about the fountains, like it made me think of the one year for Halloween, I put water in there and put dry ice in there
Mhm.
I remember that.
and tried to make it smoky. I mean, it didn't really work. And then I did that at our on Wander Lane too. Like uh our last two Halloweens there, I like well, actually I guess just our last one. The first one I tried to like do a smoky yard for Halloween and it didn't go that great. So the second one I got really elaborate and had a elaborate system of pipes going throughout the yard to have some
Wow.
through. It still didn't work that great, unfortunately.
Dang.
That's
You
cool
were-
though.
that's fun.
But it made me just like think about like, oh, that's even like just an interesting idea that like I did that at the Wallace Lane house as a kid, and I
Mm.
didn't actually think about that at all when I did it 30 years later, you know?
You did not think of it.
No, I didn't like remember that I,
Wow, that's funny.
So did you do that in the holiday house or in your house in Connecticut?
yeah, in the holiday house.
Okay. That is funny.
Yeah, the one, you know what, Wanda Way, I remember we had cable for a hot instant. That's why, because I remember watching like Nickelodeon shows.
That's probably the only house we ever did have cable,
Yeah.
huh?
So I mean, that's glorious, right? Like,
It was like left over maybe from the people before or what? Like the mom just like had had a
I just like, oh, we moved. They don't have any friends here. Let's give them some Nickelodeon for the summer.
I know it's funny like Hey Dude, that's the show I remember.
Oh yeah.
Salute your shorts.
Yeah.
You guys, when you moved, I'm curious about that. Were you guys afraid of moving or like adjusting to new friends or anything? Did that feel scary or
I mean,
I was excited. Yeah.
I thought a lot about that moving out here because I wasn't the same age as Crusoe, but it was like a similar situation. Like because since he moved in between fourth and fifth grade,
That's when
that's like
that's how
that's
old I was.
here when they go to like lower middle school. And so, and same thing, since I moved in between sixth and seventh grade, like I did feel like it was hard to make friends because everybody kind of had their like existing friends that they moved there with. And even though, like you're also around a bunch of new people, I think, yeah, people kind of stay in their groups and you're shy in seventh grade, like I mean, I think I had like five. It's funny, like I still remember, like in seventh grade, I had five classes with Brett Tingey and Dave Kane, and like, and so I kind of became friends with them just because like I saw them a lot. But
Hmm.
like, um, I mean, I didn't hang out with friends, like I can remember the specific times I hung out with friends like in seventh and eighth grade, like one time each year.
Really? So you meaning like you had a lot of alone time in that transition?
Yeah, for sure. I did like I did like every intramural after school thing
Uh,
at Churchill, and got continuously bullied by Sam Bechtold. Shout out Sam Bechtold. Not in like a you know like a terrible way. He just like was very competitive and was like 2 years older than me, and so it was just like what and his dad was the facilitator right of intramural, so I felt like he was just winning every single thing.
So, Jared, I have a question about that. So, because Heather was also in junior high with you, and of course, you and Josh are buddies and shared a room, like, so you didn't really have alone time at home. But kind of following up on
But
what
we
Ben
did
asked
share. I guess we shared a room on Wanda, but not at.
on Wanda, yeah, I'm talking about, but yeah, then not in the next house. But what, as far as his question about feeling lonely or alone, did you feel, because I never noticed, I never picked up on that. You seemed okay, which I watched for that because you were even going to these early morning like basketball, or maybe they were after school by yourself,
Yeah,
intramural or whatever they were, and you just were kind of like this happy-go-lucky, I'm gonna do this, I want to do this, and where some kids would just like refuse to do that and say I feel so sad, I don't have any friends. So I guess there's two questions in there. So did you actually feel lonely because you seemed to just be going to try to make friends, but also because your sister was at that school and your brother, was there for you after school and on weekends? It's not like you were socially alone, you know?
yeah. I mean, I don't remember feeling depressed or anything. Like I don't think I wasn't consciously lonely, but certainly like thinking back, I do feel like I was a loner, like it's funny, even another Halloween memory, I think that same dry ice Halloween, like I think you went on a date or something that night, and I took Ben and Liz trick-or-treating,
Mm.
and Heather was out with her friends, and Josh was trick-or-treating with his friends, and I like didn't have any friends to trick-or-treat with.
Mm.
So
Oh,
I took Ben and Liz trick-or-treating, and actually, and I trick-or-treated with them too. It was like, as like a 13-year-old, kind of awkwardly, like, um, and yeah, I mean, and that does feel like a lonely memory to me, like just realizing that all of you were doing something except me. But I feel like I haven't, like, it didn't feel painful at the time. It's more just like looking back, right? Especially, like meeting Nate and John in ninth grade and like starting to like have some more real friendships. Like, um, that's kind of when I realized like, oh man, I haven't, like the other specific, there's one, I walked home with friends the last day of seventh grade, and we like came to our house, and then that was like the first time I hung out with friends. And then I remember in eighth grade, like Jared Wortley, and it's funny, I like wondered about this, like if you had talked to his mom or something, and like because he just randomly invited me over to hang out, and just one time, or maybe two times or something, but like, and he was really nice and it was fun, but I do also remember kind of thinking like, oh, am I getting like invited over here as like a pity thing or something?
who was the boys' house where we did your 16th surprise party?
Mike Foss.
Oh, okay.
Well, thanks for
I,
sharing, Jared. That's cool to
yeah.
like, I guess, hear that context. I mean, and it makes sense because it's like, yeah, like seventh, eighth, it's like that critical transition. And so then I think that totally makes sense and understandable that you don't. So yeah, it's not like this
Yeah, and for sure,
depressed, but lack of deep connection and friendship that wasn't there until ninth grade.
just like awkward. I mean, I for sure was just, I mean, I think I was also, because
Yeah.
I was like in a new place, I was very self-conscious. Like another core memory from that time is like I would always walk home through the backyards, like across the street, and I would yell for Friskers, because she would just like wander around the neighborhood, or he, I guess it was a he sounds,
Friskers is the dog, not the cat. It kind of sounds like a cat name, right?
Yeah.
Friskers, dog, like a dingo mutt. Um, and I was like yelling, Friskers, Friskers, like from like the backyard of the neighbor's house across the street, and Friskers would always run over, and I
Um,
was like yelling that as I like emerged from the backyard and came down their front yard, and two kids my age were walking by on Wallace, you know, and it was Richie McDonald, who was like relatively nice to me, and but his friend was like, "What the hell are you saying, Harris?"
Oh
You're
my.
not gonna put him on blast. I know who it is.
It was, I think it was Mitch Davis.
I don't even know who that is.
I think that was his name,
Mitch,
but
if
like,
you're out there,
I just
He's
felt
he's
embarrassed. I
dead.
was like, like yelling Friskers.
Oh.
so you felt embarrassed?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh.
But
Hmm.
yet you were calling for that, probably loving that welcoming,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm coming home and there's somebody to greet me who cares about me, you
Well,
know?
and you know what else is? Yeah, I mean, that was actually something I was going to say to Heather when she said, "Do you remember specific places?" Like I mean, that's another funny thing. I mean, that was a long walk home from Churchill,
Yeah.
you know, and I would stop in the gardener's backyard because I'd walk down Stratton and then cut into that circle where the Gardeners and Whites lived. And in the gardener's backyard, they had that huge, like, husky or Malamute or whatever it was, like huge white fluffy dog. And we like got to be friends, and I would like play with it probably for like 15 minutes,
That's
like
cute.
almost every day walking home.
Mm.
That's cute.
Heather, didn't you carpool to Churchill with, I thought Jared, because I know when we lived over on
Yeah, we
Wanda,
would carpool to there, but then
We'd
I
walk home.
I would walk home.
Like even in the winter?
I guess in seventh grade, we did carpool because we actually yeah, because we carpooled with the
Like Tom.
yeah,
the
up the
Jackmans.
street. Yes, I and Heather would be like,
Um,
What? Was Tom stanky?
We
I'm
love
like, I don't
Tom.
remember that. Um, if you're watching.
it was the dad
Like,
that
oh,
drove.
was the dad?
Sorry,
Oh, I was talking about the son.
but the dad was driving, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm curious. It feels like when we talk, like Jared, you do have some like stronger memories,
Hey,
even
let's lay off. Let's lay off, Jared.
well, of like Ben and Liz, because I kind of want to hear too, like more from Ben and Liz. But I feel like some of your memories of like their like younger kind of like development years, like you were there, like you possibly remember more than perhaps I do of certain things because you were home more at that time. Um, so Liz, so yeah, I don't know if you
I have
agree.
lots of memories. Josh, do you remember the time you pretended to run away and you were just hiding in the back
Oh,
of the van or
of
something?
course I do. I thought I was. Oh man, I don't know if I feel this as an adult, but for sure as a kid, like there are those times like you got mad and like you just wanted to feel your anger and you just felt it and it felt good to like stay mad. And it's like I'm gonna show them. They're gonna think I ran away, but they knew I was there the whole time.
and this was what house?
Crawford House.
Oh,
Hmm.
Who
So
even
for
knows? I'd like to know what it was about. Why was I mad or in trouble? I'd love to remember why.
Because you couldn't watch the commish.
Probably, it probably was.
What's the
Something like
commish?
that. It was a
An old,
fantastic show.
an old, just like
a police
prime
show.
time.
He was the commissioner.
Michael Chick, is that his name?
Yeah, I think it was. Man, what a memory.
Like that.
I did that same thing at the condo. I remember I like packed my little suitcase that had like going to grandma's on it, and I
Oh,
just walked out. And you just walk down the street, and then it dawns on you that you're like, oh, I actually don't have anywhere to go. Like, but you don't really think it through. And then you're like, so I just like sat next to the creek for a while. I was like, let them miss me. See how it feels.
Yeah, I'll show them.
Yeah. You'll never see this face again.
I know that was the nice thing about having grandma and grandpa close in Roy, because yeah, I mean, I ran away to their house and hid in the camper.
And I guess Ben even sort of tried walking up there and he was a baby.
yeah, when I was 3, I went with our dog Casper for chocolate milk. I really do. I have like just it's like flashcards, you know? It's like you can't watch it like a movie, but just like snapshots. I remember walking with the dog, and then I remember Grandpa opening up the door, and I was just like looking up.
Oh.
Aw. And you got some chocolate milk?
Yep, mission accomplished, baby.
And then did Grandpa take you home?
I don't
I
know.
guess you don't.
Well, they
Probably.
called first.
Yeah.
And said, hey, are you missing somebody?
That's funny.
Oh, cute Ben.
That's
That's
funny.
fun.
That makes me
Yeah.
think of Josh and Heather, do you remember that like ledge and mom, like the ledge in the front yard, like just that little concrete wall?
To the front, to the back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like I remember
Casper.
jumping off that, like thinking it was so big, of course, like now you go by and it's like a foot off the ground.
Casper would also escape out of that fence. Like he would like climb up there to like sneak out, and then we finally put something, so I don't think he got out anymore. But
How
I
do
also,
these, I'm curious, I mean, we can get back to memory lane, but how does this influence, I guess, do you think about it like with your kids or as parenting? Like when you think back to this, like, does it shift or alter how you parent your kids at all or anything like that?
hmm, is this for any of us?
I
Yeah,
mean,
future
as
kids.
far as like what I was just talking about, like thinking of those years of, moving from Roy to Holiday, I certainly like thought a lot about that moving to Connecticut, like because before we moved, I didn't really think about it and kind of thought like, oh, it's like a good time to move. The kids are still pretty young. But then after we moved, or I don't even remember when I realized, but at some point I was like, that is like a tricky transition to move somewhere completely new, you know? Um, and I guess mostly, I mean, like most things for me, it just like gives me compassion for my kids mostly, like just trying to, yeah, like love them and their experience and support them however I can.
Yeah, for sure. Like your experience just reminds me to like be curious, and not just be like, how was school? Good, cool. Like actually like ask questions, specific questions. Who do you guys like? I think one of the questions, Heather, you prompted was like people or authority figures or church leaders or whatever. Like, who do you feel like has impacted you in that way? Like, who do you remember,
Hmm.
if anyone? Is that important to you?
I yeah, like um I don't think I could like identify like a single experience where like this person stood out to me for doing this several times. I think I can just feel like kind of like a blanket,
Mm,
like of oh, there was good people with good example, like even Jeremy, his dad, Jim, I think was probably the one that I probably interacted with most as, just as a friend's dad. Um, like I don't feel like we had so many interactions where it was like, yeah, like that was a very like mentor moment, like I don't recall that, right? I just feel like there's this, like I said, blanket of love and support through these other people in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
Josh, you used to go to some guy's house that you lifted weights all the time,
Yeah, but
Oh,
that was
across the street.
that was I mean that was I was 17 at that point.
but you wouldn't say like he was influential or
I mean it was influential at the time for like, just like football, right? Like wanting
yeah.
to be like a good football player, a good football leader.
Mhm.
When
Definitely
Heather
looked up
wrote
to him
that,
in life.
one person I thought of was Mrs. Willard at Municipal Elementary, who I got lucky that I had her as a fifth grade teacher, and then after fifth grade, she moved to sixth grade, and
mm.
then I had her again. And in sixth grade, I mean, I don't know if you remember this, Mom, and I don't know if in my head it feels like a long time that like almost every day at the end of school I would like hang out at school in her class with like um like Shelley Jackson. I think Shelley, she knew Mrs. Willard somehow, so she was like almost like her aunt, and I think like one other person too. And we would just like hang out after school, and I felt like we stayed for like an hour. It could have easily been just like 15 minutes or something, but like I feel like we would just like hang out and maybe sort of help her clean up, or even just sort of be there while she was like cleaning up or whatever. But she for sure like influenced me. Just, I mean, she's like my favorite teacher, you know. And it's funny, I can't even, it's not like I can remember. I mean, I remember she was cool. I remember her. I remember asking about her boots one time, and she told me they were her shit kickers. And I was like, that's cool, shit kickers. Um, yeah, I guess that was like the feeling that I got. Actually, that was probably what it was. She seemed like very real, right? Like she wasn't like the type of teacher that would like infantilize and like talk down to kids. You know, she would just talk to us like we were just people. And of course, like being in sixth grade, you feel like you're, the last year of elementary school, you feel like you're so old and mature.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally, and in fact, that's something I've thought about too, is in fact, I have thought about this before, of as far as like being shy in seventh and eighth grade, like, and kind of lonely, yeah, I didn't really think about it at the time. But then when I think of like sixth grade and having like tons of friends and being friends with my teacher and feeling like I was like sort of popular, I guess, like just everybody knowing who I was, and obviously, like knowing a lot of those kids for several years, and then going to Churchill and not really knowing anybody.
Mm.
Contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've never really thought about that, just because I had such a different experience. Like I went to school with the same kids from kindergarten to senior year, like I never really even thought about that, of like, especially that, like going into seventh grade, just picturing that, and also knowing like kind of the environment of Churchill too. Like it is very, I would say, like kind of cliquey. Like as far as like, it's like people just know, like you grow up there. There's like a certain energy to, like, if you grew up in that neighborhood, it's like you kind of are in, like I already had my friends, some of them went to Olympus, but a lot of them went to Churchill. And it's like, yeah, it's like just having, I mean, I got a little bit of a taste of that when I went to dad's during ninth grade, but like, and I did eat lunch in a bathroom stall, like in the movies.
Talk about that, Liz.
But it was simply because I just wanted to avoid walking into the lunchroom and like looking around and being like, where do I sit?
Like on your first day, you did that?
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not even gonna try to go. I'll just go straight to the bathroom and eat my little lunch. And then, by the next day I'd made like a friend, through like the
I
church.
forgot that. How long did you live with dad?
I don't know. I think it was like,
December through May.
yeah, it wasn't too long, but
Man, that must have been weird. So this is a good time to transition, maybe, to talk a little bit about like Roy versus Salt Lake, because did that feel like you were like, going, I don't know, that must
Do
have
you
been,
feel better than them? That's what he's alluding to.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, no, like I felt way more dumb than they were, because I went to like a French class, and I'd taken French, and I was like in French class and they were all speaking French like fluently. And I'm like, my class was a joke. Like I didn't learn anything. Like we would basically like make fun of the teacher and like laugh and like kind
And you're talking Churchill to whatever,
Choo-choo.
to
So-
Davis?
Choo-choo.
choo-choo. The only thing I remember is je suis élève choo-choo. That's all I remember.
Huh.
And but so I had to drop out of French because I'm like they're talking, I don't know what's going on. And so I actually felt like a lot of them were, I feel like for me, like Churchill just felt like I could kind of not try that hard and still like do a good job in school. Whereas I actually felt like they were like prioritized
Mm.
like at Kaysville Junior High. Like it was harder. It was a lot harder
Yeah.
actually. And I felt like they were all like learning much more than I had. But that could have also been just me having friends and just kind of like, like sharing answers and like having more of a support system and like versus not and like really having to do it all on your own.
Well, not
And
if the class is speaking French.
yeah, yeah,
Class in Churchill wasn't. That kind of doesn't look too good for Churchill.
yeah, Churchill. Um,
I
but
do want to just comment though, Liz, you brought something really, I think, remarkable up that I'd never thought of before. And the difference of like your older three siblings growing up with both parents in the home, right? Until, you know, they were what? I mean, Josh, you were in fifth grade?
It was the summer after fifth, or the summer after, yeah, summer after fifth grade, I think.
Yeah, so summer after fifth, and like we've said, Jared in seventh grade, Heather ninth grade. But then this other component I've never thought of, but you and Ben stayed with the same kids in the same area from kindergarten through high school.
yep.
That is something interesting. I've never really thought about that. That was very consistent. You had the same friends all through school. I mean, you all graduated from the same high school, but I mean, all five of you, right, graduated from Skyline High School. But what do you think that influences? I mean, do you think going through the same schools with the same kids, Ben and Liz, do you think that did offer you some stability?
I mean,
Like you
just look
go
at the
through what?
older 3A versus the younger two. I think it's pretty obvious.
Because I mean, Jared, you didn't go through what Jared just expressed, right? Of starting a new school and not knowing and going for 2 years in junior high, not really having any friends.
Yeah, because I
But
like
yeah,
even my experience was like short-lived and it felt like I could always go back, right? Like Jared was like, "Oh, this is my new life now." Right? Like it's not like for
Mhm.
me, I always knew it would be temporary, I guess. So
And
it was
you're
like,
just talking about this little blip of time, right? And you went to live with dad in Kaysville,
yeah.
but all the rest of the time you were in the same school with the same friends.
Yeah, and I do think I mean, in some ways I think it was good, in some ways maybe not good, because I think one way is like it takes me going really out of my comfort zone to like talk to strangers, I think, because I just like had built-in friends for so long that it's like I don't really feel comfortable, maybe more so now, but like to just like go out and that might just be my personality too. I'm just not like gonna go up to random people, but I feel like I never had to because I just had friends from school and I never really like had to try to make friends.
Hmm. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, I would say safety, security, kind of like what Josh said about that blanket. Like, it's, yeah, like the pros and cons or the differences of whatever of of all of our lives. But I was just trying to reflect on like, how did I actually make friends? And I think it was just like exposure of church, of school. Obviously, there's like 12 boys all my age in the neighborhood, in the church. So it's like, and obviously some of us got along more than others, but like, um, absolutely, like it was like I felt so comfortable with all of my friends and like their houses and like even going on vacation with some of them, and like them taking me out to dinner and just like all sorts of things like I definitely felt taken care of.
Well, and that's another thing about like for me, I felt in the Valley View home, like that's for sure where I have most of my childhood memories. Maybe the condo and there are probably like the childhood memories for me. But Valley View did feel like this point of like reaching a sense of security for me in a way of like feeling like I'm fitting in a certain way, right? Of like, because Valley View was like in the neighborhood where like my friends lived, and it felt like we'd like finally made it or something in a way where we were like belonging in that community more. And so I feel like I have really fond memories of that time. And then I feel like when we moved away, it was like I think that was really hard for me to feel like just moving away from that like neighborhood. It was just like this bubble kind of.
Yeah,
Well, because it was like three cul-de-sacs, right? So all these dead ends that the kids could run around, not many cars driving into where there's three cul-de-sacs that all, go to dead ends. And then we just moved a couple blocks up the street, but you were out of the neighborhood.
exactly. It was like you're on the outside looking in.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I also felt more in when we lived there.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
I'm even curious about you too, Mom, because I remember like I just flash back to I remember carpool or something, seeing the for sale sign and feeling like embarrassed,
Hmm.
like pulling up because like deep down I knew, right? It was like we're not like really choosing to leave, right? Feeling like forced to leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting to hear from like your perspective as like a parent,
Hmm.
not just like as a
Well,
kid.
and that for sale sign was up for a long time too.
Yeah, so and this is after I'd been, laid off from Computer Associates. And there had also been, I mean, just the time of the market. The market wasn't really stable. The IT stocks had dropped after 9/11, and the market was unstable. So yeah, it wasn't a really good time to sell. And so luckily, just before the house was going to go into foreclosure, we sold it to a dentist who had just gotten out of dental school. And actually, I still go to that dentist. And but having that, it was very depressing for me. I mean, that was a really hard time. In fact, going through my scrapbook today, I think I sent you all pictures from some letters you'd written. I came across a lot of cards I'd gotten. And I'm like, what are all these people talking about? And they're all saying, I'm so sorry for this hard time you're going through, and you're going to get through it. And I'm going, what date is on these cards? And it was, during that time when I was trying to find a job and we did have to leave. And the day we moved out of that house, Jared, you just got home from your mission. Sammy was born the day we were moving. Heather had her first baby. So much movement right in that time. I mean, between all the things, right? Just looking through the scrapbook of, Heather getting married. Jared was on his mission. Then Josh leaves on his mission. Then the house might foreclose. I can't find a job. I mean, just all these big things. I'm supporting 5 kids. I'm trying to get through it. And some of the cards, I like both, I think Ben and Liz, I sent you cards where you had both mentioned, like Ben said, I hope you don't have to, if I could wish anything for my mom, it was like a prompt you were writing to, I would hope you would not have to pay bills,
Yeah.
And then Liz wrote something on hers about, you work so much, or so it was interesting even for me
How old were you guys
to
then?
see
Like
those
in
during that time.
2003?
10.
12.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, as much as I loved living in that house, it's funny, I don't, in that neighborhood, right? Those people, that ward, I don't remember how hard, like how I felt at the time all these notes were written. So it was interesting how I was looking at them going, what are they talking about? Like a hard time. So yeah, I'm sure you all felt that, right? Jared was, I think, more removed from it because he was on his mission during that time. I mean, it was literally Jared left. We had the Olympic, you missed the Olympics, the Winter Olympics in Utah, but right after he left, it was
9/11 was right after
9/11
I left.
happened.
Mm.
He was in the MTC 9/11, and then I had just bought that house. In August, he leaves. We have 9/11 in the country. I'm laid off from my job literally months
You didn't
later.
buy that in
What was
August,
that?
but that you didn't buy that house in August of 2001.
I bought it just before you left.
No, because
I think it was July.
no, because then you moved right when I got home. You weren't there just 2 years.
Yeah, we were there 4 years, I thought.
But we were renting it. So I was leasing to own, and then I bought the house. So I
Okay.
think we lived there. So we moved in when when Liz was in kindergarten, and then we moved out in 2003. So how many years was that, Liz? Like 98 to 2003 was 5 years.
Like fourth grade? Is that like almost 5 years?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was almost
Because we
like
moved when Ben got baptized, I remember in December or something. No, we moved in the summer. But anyway, we had um that's why we lived in the house longer, but that's when I bought the house, right? Was just because I remember thinking, oh, I've made it. I make enough money. I can qualify to buy this house. Jared's going to mission. It's all good. I can pay for his mission. Life is grand. And then literally just months. I mean, it all crashed. But life continues to go on, right? Even though there's kind of those things that come that are unexpected. I mean, then, like I said, Heather gets married, then Josh leaves on his mission. I mean, Ben and Liz are still, growing up and experiencing, all of the things in their lives. And so something I'm learning right now is like even with all the changes I'm going through right now, that I feel like are good is that there are two different stories I could tell. And I felt it was the exact same then. There were two different stories, and you know me, like I am positive to a fault sometimes. So I was not telling a sad story to people. And in some of these cards, I mean, they were saying, wow, like Jared went on his mission. We'd all spoken at his mission farewell. And one of the cards was from Jane, who said, who's Chrissy's mom, and Jane Forsgren, and she was saying, wow, I'm so inspired by you and your family and your children and all these things, and I was determined to have success and keep going and, just be positive. And I see that right now in my life. Like I could tell a very sad story. I could say, I'm going to be homeless. I am going to be leaving my home and traveling around without a home. Now, yes, I get to stay with you all. I get to be doing one thing, that is going to be fun for me is on a road trip, right? But it's interesting how this has been really coming up a lot for me in my mind is the story I'm telling myself is very positive, but other people might look at it and go, no, she's packing her stuff up, putting it all in storage because she doesn't have any money. She is going on a road trip until her Social Security kicks in, and then she's going on a mission. But these things could look really different to someone depending on how you look at them. And so for me, I think I'm so grateful that I have been given this optimism because it makes my life so different. Because the lens I see through the world is very different than how some others see my life.
well, Mom, thank you for saying all of that. When you when you were first saying like you didn't remember like yeah that you have like fond memories of Valley View and you don't remember it being hard, it made me think, well, isn't I feel like that's true for myself too, and I wanted to hear from the rest of you too. Like you, it's easier to remember the good times than the hard times. Like, and even just like, I guess neither too. Like, even just talking about some of the memories that we're sharing, like they're not necessarily happy or sad. They're just like weird memories that stick out in your brain, right? But for me talking about like I don't I don't remember feeling lonely after moving it's more the it's more it's more like the contrast of, I mean, I guess for me it feels like transitional, like looking back to then, and it is a little sad talking about it, but I didn't like feel like that at the time. I mean, and I think that's probably part of it too, is like it's like when you're going through a hard time, you also don't, like if you give into it, then it's you have to keep going on, right?
Well, and I think it, again, I am a big believer in, and I think as kids, right, there's one aspect of being a younger child where you don't necessarily know the problems, but maybe you feel safe, right? You've got your friends, your home, your health, because I think kids are very much in the present. But I do think even in these notes that, Ben and Liz wrote, they were aware of my problems. They were aware of the worries and the stresses in the home. Like I was aware of my parents fighting about money all the time. I didn't feel unsafe or that we didn't have what we needed, and we had more than what we needed. But I didn't like the feeling of contention, which I'm guessing as children, some of you didn't like the feeling of worry or, whatever else you felt during that. So I think that kind of can align with what Heather wanted to talk about today was, what influences us. And I think as everyone has said, you have certain memories associated with houses or neighborhoods or people or schools. But I think if anything, we have feelings associated with that. And the feelings come from the beliefs and the stories we tell ourselves. So whether or not we tell, and I think it's again different based on personality. Like if you're more of a worrier, maybe there were times you couldn't relax because there were things out of your control. Where Jared, I think like you've said, you were just so carefree that you just were kind of like, okay, things are okay. Even with the friends, you didn't really ever seem to be sad about it. And I think same with Liz, like I've said this to her, like where she would go, that picture of her on the ski lift by herself, just in the moment, enjoying her life. And I think everybody just experiences things different based on our lens, which is a combination of so many things.
What's what feels interesting that like stands out from this is these two moments where big shifts happened when we moved from Roy to Holiday and when you sold the Valley View house, and where I think it was probably had a bigger impact on me and Jared and Josh the first time, and Ben and Liz the second time.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like perhaps sometime I'd love to hear for you on like, the different effects, for you that you felt at those different shifts in time. And so I guess I know we need to close soon, but I'm curious because one of the things that I think comes with moving somewhat like frequently is the ability to adapt to change. And so I do feel like that is, and which does also come about by your perspective and your belief system and all sorts of things. But I do feel like that is something that all of us seem to be somewhat good at, I would think. I know for me, my life path number is number 5, which is all about change and adventure. And so, it's interesting, even as I've looked at like my own choices and how even though sometimes those things have been challenging, it's also been what's fueled my desire to like learn more or to like achieve certain goals. So what I'm realizing is that honestly, all of it is for my good. And like even if it looks really bad, I feel like with this like new job, it's funny how I think, perhaps having different economic situations growing up as a kid and even as an adult, I've kind of always thought that like some amount of money was going to make me feel safer or stronger or belong or something. But what I'm realizing the more that I'm talking to people who like on a regular basis, have like millions of dollars, it's not any different. Like they don't feel any safer. Like someone today even was like, yeah, unfortunately, I'm in a higher tax bracket, I make too much money, which was just an interesting perspective, right? Like, and so I guess what I'd love to hear from each of you, even in just like a minute or two, is like what, as far as this, you know, thinking of all of our childhoods, 18 plus years, like growing up, which we could like multiply that by like six of us, even, and all of the different ways in which we experience life, which really isn't, I mean, there is our individual family unit, but it is so much a better community, right? It takes a village. Um, so what do you feel like has given you the strength or the capacity to really just adapt to change or to even just move in your life in a way that feels like that just feels good? Because I feel like all of us have made those choices in a way that have put us on a path that is overall joyful. Even though there's been challenges, I feel like we are doing what we love, like in our life. Like if I look at each of us, like that's what it feels like. At least that's one thing I feel like we have in common, even if we have different life paths. So I don't know if any of you feel inspired to share, if you have a couple words of what you think it's been for you, um, to be able to adapt or just create the change or the choices that put you on these like trajectories.
I mean, for me, I'll just say really quickly, always wanted to move as a kid. I think I've said this before on this podcast. I tried to get grandma and grandpa to move all the time and they wouldn't. So I think yes, we have a lot of influences, but for me, as have helped people write their stories, I've written a lot of my life. I just came this way. I feel like, yes, I've had different influences that I've had to choose, kind of what way to go and how to respond. But I kind of look at you all the same. And that way I saw how you came. And yes, you have different personalities, but also I think your gifts and strengths. I don't know. To me, I see it as like a magnet. Those things kind of propel us forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Liz.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's interesting when you were talking because I like being adaptable to change, and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I think I really am when I feel in control of the change. Like I feel adaptable to it, or and I think maybe that's why I like doing it myself, right? Like making that choice myself to be like, oh, I want to move to a new place, or I want to go do this or try this, and it feels really freeing and like adventurous to do that. And but like when change occurs and it's not my choice, I would say it's uncomfortable for me, it's not something that like comes easier. And so yeah,
Do
I
you think
but
on some level you're attracting that change, even if you don't consciously know?
for sure. I think we're bringing in I've always like all of the stories of I do like adventure. I am a free spirit, so I do like that. So I also feel like I came into this life like ready to just experience all of the things. Um and I'm learning it's like I just have like these two parts of myself. One that's like really free, like when it's my choice, it feels like really free and expansive and open, and then like someone else wants to like do something different and I'm like whoa, like hold on there, so it's but also I think part of like surrendering to that too is like really beautiful, and I think I'm like in the process of learning that and of learning like really surrendering to that isn't just when I'm making the choices, it's sort of just like what like life brings you. And I think, thinking about this topic and thinking of the Valley View house and like that me like symbolizing something to me in my life and feeling like a sense of security, and just after having a recent conversation with our dad and thinking like of how things could be different. But then it's like, but it wasn't. And it's like this, like if it wasn't this, it would have been something else. Like is kind of what I feel like this message coming in to me of like there nobody is living like this perfect fairy tale life, and nobody actually wants to anyways. So I'm going kind of on a different trajectory, but that's the lessons that are coming up in my life, and even thinking about like what homes symbolize to me, and like that home symbolized something really big to me, like, and even like the different that neighborhood in general of like a certain level of like success and like would bring joy, or like a certain level of
Security.
fulfillment. But like Heather was just saying, there are people with like lots of money that like that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. And so yeah, adaptability.
Thanks, Liz.
You said the word, so it counts.
Yeah. Back to adaptability. I'm adaptable to conversational topics.
I mean, yeah, quick. I mean, I'll just agree with Liz that yes, for me, I think I'm hella adaptable. Um, and like also like what you said, Liz, yeah, like if something for me is in my control, of course it's gonna feel easier. That's a human thing. But yeah, like it's interesting because like looking at this balance of like how we come and just like the nurture nature thing. Because I look at back at some of the things I've done, I'm like, dude, that was so stupid, like so delusional in the best way. And ironically, it reminds me of the new Moana movie.
Ah,
Um,
how is
so
it?
I mean, it's not as good as the first, but it's good. King already has it memorized, so you can ask him.
Oh, okay.
But like, it's like, so Moana asks her grandma a question in it, and she says, "Grandma, why?" And her grandma's passed on. She comes back as an ancestor. She's a guide for her.
Oh, I love it.
And she says, "Grandma, why is this so hard this time?" And she's like, "Well, last time you didn't know what you could lose."
Mm.
Right. And so, like, looking back at these things, I was like, oh, yeah, I had no idea what I had to lose. And then as you get older or get more responsibility, that pressure is there. So that's also what's coming up for me. But at the same time, I still have that skill of doing like big leaps. And it's like because I have that muscle and that trust and I know it works out, I can still apply it now. So that's how that ties into adaptability for me too.
Mm.
Like doing that scary thing, right? Of like, even though it was scary and uncomfortable to transition in those ways, I gained the skill or the resilience that I know it's going to work out anyway.
Yay. I feel like that is a huge thing, even though it's like sounds simple, like just knowing it's gonna work out anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
the
talk to people every
resilience.
day, don't
I
know
love
that.
the R
So,
word.
Yeah, resilience. Josh, thanks, Ben. Josh.
Uh, yeah, a few things. So one, as you're thinking about adaptability, I think for let's say I've been an adult for 20 years, right? So like the first 20 years, then the later 20 years. So like for that first decade of adulthood, I would say that I lived in worry. Um, and Ben touched on this. We're talking to Dad. I was very worried about not being a provider, right? Like I was very worried of I will always have a job. I will always provide. Like that will always like I will not be like my mom or my dad, right? Like that like was very clear to me. Like that was almost a drive, right? Which isn't a good one. I don't like if I could go back to my younger self, like, hey, like you got to pick a better principle to sit on than this one. I mean, it's happened. So, um, and then I think as something gets out of your control, and we could talk about what is and isn't in your control anyways. Like mom said, did you create that for yourself, right? And so kind of that adaptability came in when it was forced upon me. And I realized, oh, this isn't that bad, right? Like I didn't have a job and I was like, oh, everything's okay. All worked out. Oh, that turned out better than okay. I have this much more money now. Oh, and I just got another job. Like, oh yeah, like this all works out. Like this. And I think that kind of opened the door to say, like, oh, like there's so many ways this can work out. And there's no sense in fearing it. You should be responsible in my perception, right? Like you should understand the risks as they prolong. That doesn't mean you don't do anything about it, right? You're hopeful, right? I read something recently, like there's the difference between optimism and hope, right? Optimism is like, oh, it'll all work out, like whether you do anything or not. Where being hopeful is like you understand there's good that can come, but you are working towards it. And so like that's kind of, even as that period of not working for so long, like I wasn't worried, and I still don't know why. I guess, I would think just confidence in that, like it'll work out. Like I'm doing what I feel guided to do. I did a little slower than I think you know, would have, if I got to redo it, I did a little slower. I would have done it a little bit faster. But that process, having got there to being like, oh, this is okay. I still didn't worry in that time frame, right? Like, and I think that's been really helpful because for so long I would have been so worried of I didn't have a job, I don't have this, I'm going to lose a house, I'm going to do this. Like that was all that worry. Now that's gone because part of it is you realize like that stuff doesn't matter. Like the house we live in now, like there was a point like if we have to sell that house, we have to sell that house. Like it's just a house. Like it's not anything important. It's just a thing. And so like going through all these experiences creates that adaptability that you realize like all this is just stuff and like it'll all be okay. I don't know if we talked about this on the call, but I had a friend recently that was going through a hard time, and I laughed at him and I just said, hey, it could be worse. And he was like, I hate that. It's like I hate when people say like it could always be worse. He's like, yeah, I know it could, but does worse matter if it's bad right now? Like there's a thin line between bad and worse. So who cares? And but for me, that's always the thing that's working. Like, no, it could, like the worst isn't even that bad. Like my worst case scenario is never going to really happen. So I'm not even like it doesn't matter. But kind of coming back to this adaptability through that experience and how it's helped for me is as I've gotten older, that first comment of, I was running away from, I don't want to be like my mom, I don't want to be like my dad. As I'm getting older, and maybe it's painful, is like I see where I am like my mom this way. I am like my dad this way. And I still fight it because you want to be an individual, right? You want to be yourself. And so when I see that, like I recognize it, but I try and think like, okay, that's true. And I think that's something I'm learning right now as I get older is I need to have less resentment to that and accept it more and just be like, that's okay. Like these are good things. It doesn't make you not you. Like you are biologically a product of your mom and dad. And so you will have these traits and you can recognize them and they are just a part of you. And so that's a whole other topic, right? On adaptability. But Ben made that comment of kind of as we were talking to Dad about running away, or not running away, but for a lack of better word, running away from being these people to where you get older and realize, oh, I am these people. And how do I bring in the good of that and see that side of it instead of, accepting the good parts and not saying, I'm not going to be these others. Anyways, adaptability.
Yes.
My turn. It's so funny that you finish on that, Josh, because um yeah, mom sent me today a letter that I or she, she was sending us stuff where she's packing, and she sent me a letter that sister missionary from my mission wrote to her, basically like a thank you for me being awesome and because of her tutelage. And and one of the things she said in there is like that I guess I had mentioned to her that I was like worried that I was was like my dad or something. I think the same thing that you're saying, Josh, just like having fear about that, you know, like we all do at various times for parents. And I can't remember. I can't remember that specific instance. I guess I do remember feeling like that, but um, I feel similar to you, Josh, and Mom was very sweet. She um, oh, because the sister missionary said something like that. Mom told me that I reminded her of Dad or something, and that was like worrying me, and I kind of actually, Mom, when I read that, didn't quite believe that. I don't know, but for whatever reason, that exchange happened, and Mom apologized, or she said sorry, like I did that. I don't think I meant to, I don't whatever. But I feel so at peace with that now. I think the same way Josh is saying, and this is what I wrote to mom. This is over text, and this is what I wrote to mom that I feel like is applicable. I said, um, I am like dad in some ways, and I'm like you in some ways, and I'm like myself in all the ways. Um, and yeah, like I think that's kind of something we're all learning, right? Is yeah, we have these pieces of nature and nurture. But when it comes down to it, we're just ourselves, and we have to be okay with that, and we have to love that. And I think we've talked about this before too, but I think there's a lot of like divinity in that too, like accepting ourselves as like divine souls, like some, and I think this is really true. A belief that I have is that we are both like really special and incredibly common, and like being able to hold those things together is like what being human is all about. And I think that's can actually is embodied really well in that statement of having pieces of both of your parents, but then being yourself too, right? This dualness. Um, and I shouldn't say more. I think that was nice.
Oh, that was a perfect place to end.
I will
Adaptability.
I will say on adaptability, because I have to talk about it, is back to the question that mom asked. I personally um I do have a hard time with change. And the thing that surprised me as you're talking about that is in the same way that, we're not always just all of one thing, but like in my job as a producer, I have to be very flexible. Like things change a lot, and I think that I'm good at that. I think I'm good at adapting to different situations. But in life, I'm not very good at that. Like it took me, it was hard for me to come around to the idea of moving. Um, and I kind of got on board. Like once we decided to, I really got on board for a few months. But then, like as it approached, I mean, I was like terrified to move, and then it was still really hard once we moved. And I've even thought about that now. Like as work is slow, and I've found some things to fill my time. Like I'm like, oh, I really like a schedule. Like I really like being able to not like predictability, and repeating something is good for me. and and I think it's all the things, right? But and I mean, and it's hard for me when things change, kind of what Liz said, adaptability.
Aw, I love you guys. Thanks for just like going on this journey. I feel like maybe we opened some doors to other, other rabbit holes or topics we want to talk on. And yeah, thank you all for joining us. And as Josh says, smash the like button, hit subscribe, like do all the things.
Something like that. Yeah. Smash the like button, hit subscribe. We'll see you on the flip side.
Oh,
Family dinner.
Love you all.
bye.
Love you all.